Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase podcast. Today we are talking with Teleshia Delmar. She is founder of the Happy Wife Sorority. I love that. It just speaks to me of coming together of wives and women and sisters and just like all the stuff that wives need for support. So welcome to the show, Teleshia. How'd you get started in all of this?
Thank you. Well, I would have to say that I was not a happy wife. So that is what kind of really spurred me to get to this point. I had on the outside, my life really looked successful. I had gone to college, gotten married, had the job, the nice car, and the nice house. So by society standard, I looked pretty in a good spot, right? Looked really successful. But honestly, I was married and miserable. And so my husband and I, we had gotten to a point where we became glorified roommates. And so how I describe that is like we were literally sharing space. Like, I was coming home every night. He was coming home every night. We were sharing space in the same bed, but we were not emotionally connected. And so I say we were sharing space, kids, and bills, but we really weren't sharing each other. And I was like, and honestly, at that time, sometimes we weren't even physically connected, if you know what I mean. And so it just got to a point where I was like, but this is not even fun no more. I didn't think married life was supposed to be like this. And so, we weren't disrespectful for one another, but you could just tell we weren't growing together. We were truly growing apart. And so one day I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I think we need to go to counseling. I think we need to work on it because clearly you and I have not figured out how to do this thing together and get out of this rut. We felt really stuck. And so he looked at me dead in my face and was like, nah, I'm good. Can you imagine how I felt in that moment? Like in that moment, I was angry. Like, this is the man who professed his love for me. What in the world? Why are you giving up? And then I went from angry to being sad and crying my tears, crying out. And so after that moment, I just said, you know what? This is not going to define me. I made a vow before God and my family that I was going to take these vows to the day that I die. And so I said to myself, if this ship fails, it won't be because I didn't do everything that I needed to do for me. And so I actually went to counseling without him because he didn't want to go. He thought he was good because clearly he thought everything was my fault. But honestly, when I went to the counselor, I was like, it's all his fault. Like, he's wrong and everything. And so I had to learn the hard way. It wasn't all him, right? Some of it was me. And so the counselor began to help me see the blind spots. And I always think there's value in having an independent person who can see the things that you can't necessarily see because you're so close inside the situation. And so I began to work on me. And can I tell you, I start to show up differently. And then my husband saw it, and out the blue, he came to me and was like, I'll go to counseling with you next week. Can you imagine? And so, of course, the old Teleshia would have said, it's about time you came to your senses. You should have made that decision a long time. Like, I would have gone off. But the new Teleshia said, okay, and I let it be. And so he started to work on him. And the really big thing that I learned from that experience is that as wives, we really do have power and influence. We just don't use it correctly. And so you can't make a person change, but you can certainly inspire them to want to be better. And that's ultimately what I did for my spouse. And so I just thought, you know what? I need to help other wives get the keys, to understand that you do have value, you do have worth, you do have power, you do have influence, but maybe, just maybe, we're approaching it not necessarily in the right way. And so I wanted to create this safe space where wives can come and talk about the ups and the downs and the ugly about wifehood, in a space where you don't feel judged and you're not embarrassed by your situation. I got married 22 years ago. And so back then, there was no Instagram and Facebook, but everybody looked happy. And so now, when I think about couples now, everybody looks happy on the gram. Everybody looks happy, but then you don't really know what's going on the inside. And so I just decided that I wanted to create a platform so we can talk about the not so happy parts of our relationships, so that we can get the help that we need and feel like we are not alone. Because you always feel like it's everybody else is happy and why you're not happy and what's going on in your relationship. And so I just wanted to create this safe and sacred space for wives to come. And get the strategies that they need, so they can not just be a good wife, but also be a happy wife.
You know, it's being happy is so underrated.
It is. It is.
And there was an old saying, Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Right.
My husband sometimes says that to me about being a wife, being his wife. It's like, it is a give and take on both sides. My grandmother used to say it's a 60-40 proposition, and both sides have to give 60. But it's also about knowing each other and knowing your hot buttons and which buttons you can push and which buttons you just need to, like, cover in that, this is the nuclear weapon. Don't detonate this or you're going to just blow up your whole marriage.
Right. Exactly.
And you just don't push those buttons.
Yeah, it's definitely about learning each other. And I think sometimes when you've been married, and especially when the doggone kids come, there's such a joy, but they will kill a relationship instantly, right? Because your focus becomes the children. And so you stop focusing on each other and you stop nurturing the relationship, and everything is about the kids. And so I tell the wives, I say, look, there's a difference between having transactional talks versus quality conversations. And those transactional talks are the things that really need to be happening. Who's going to pick up Johnny from basketball practice? Who's taking little Belle to piano practice? The refrigerator broke. How are we going to pay for it? Are we going to get it out the savings, or we're going to put it on a credit card? Those conversations are definitely needed, but I call those transactional talks because it's not about you all. It's about the things around you that need to be handled. And so a lot of times when you're in your relationship, because you and your spouse are having those transactional talks, you misinterpret that as if it's you all nurturing the relationship. And it's not. It's handling that. But you can't forget to have quality conversations. Babe, how was your day today? Babe, tell me, how does that feel? This is what's going on in the political scene. What is that? How does that make you feel? This is what's going on the job. Like, knowing each other, and because we're all getting older, which means hopefully we're getting more mature, we're evolving, different influences are coming at us. And so we get into the space where we're not even growing and learning each other and nurturing the relationship, because we're so busy focused on the car note, the kids, the tire flat, it's all the things that we need to do. And so we definitely need to create more quality conversations. And so that we can make sure that I always say, when it comes to a relationship, especially a marital relationship, you're never standing still. Never. You're either growing together or you're growing apart. There is no middle ground. There is no gray area. And so if you're not careful, you may think that those transactional talks are growing together. But I can tell you how many people have decided to say split ways, and they're like, I don't even know this person anymore. Because when those kids move out and move on, you're like, well, darn, I thought we had been talking all these years. Yeah, you have, about the kids. Now the kids are gone. Now you're looking at each other like, who are you? I need to find myself. I need to figure out who the heck you are. And so we got to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And so that you all can continue building the bond as you are making and raising the kids and doing the transactional talks that are needed to run the day to day, so to speak.
And looking forward to the future, having talks about, when the kids are gone, we will, and having some hopes and dreams that don't involve the kids, and having vacations that don't involve the kids. You don't have to take them everywhere.
Yes. We need you shouting from the rooftops of that, right? It is so important. And actually, I just came back from a girls' trip. And I'm like, taking girls' trip, because sometimes you need to get away from your spouse too, the spouse and the kids, right? Because you just need to refresh. You need to hit the reset button, and you just need to fill your cup. And I think as wives, sometimes we take it for granted that everybody's taken. You got your spouse taken, your kids taken, your boss taken, mama's taken, cousins are everybody's taken. But when are you getting your cup filled up? And a lot of times, when you do the little things like, oh, I'm gonna get a mani and pedi. Okay, you didn't fill your cup. You just put a couple drops in the cup. We need you to fill the cup. Like, what are you doing to prioritize your self-care and really fill your cup? And I feel like, we put a couple sips in, but then it gets drained right out so quickly because we have day-to-day demands on us. And so it's important that we even take the trips without our spouses and the kids too.
Yeah, I agree. And connecting with other women who are kind of in the same on the same journey and at the same spot in the path that you're on, and just having the deep conversations with them about how you feel. Women connect to women in a different way than we connect with men. And we need our sisters. We need other women in our lives where you can just say, yeah, and that. And they're like, yeah, I get you. And you say that to your husband and his eyes glaze over like, what are you talking about? That's not even a thing. And you're like, yeah, it is.
Like, we get each other, right? And it's nothing like having a conversation with someone who gets us, right? People laugh at me all the time because I'm really protective about who comes in the Happy Wife Sorority. And I say, look, this is truly an exclusive group. We don't want the singles in there. The singles can't relate. We're in the thick of married life. We need someone who understands that. And so I'm very particular. No men in the group. No, not in this group. You get your own group, but not in the Happy Wife Sorority, because we really need that sisterhood to help us when we're ready to cry, vent, share, laugh, grow, and celebrate. We want to do it with people who understand us and get us. And we want to be our biggest cheerleader. Sometimes I always say being a mom and a wife is almost a thankless job because, again, people just expect us to do. And it's because there's this expectation from society and our loved ones, they sometimes don't appreciate us. And so sometimes being a wife and a mom, you just feel totally unappreciated for all the gazillion things you do every single day to make sure everybody's cared for. And yet our cup is like on empty. And so we definitely need our sisterhood to kind of help support us, encourage us, and inspire us when we're feeling down and when we just need that uplift. And, as I always say, everybody needs their own, how you say you need your hype man. We need our hype woman as well, right? To kind of just steer us and help us when we're getting really close to the edge and we're about to pull our hair out.
and helping with boundaries. Having other women to say, yeah, that's a good boundary. Because as women, we have been trained to, it's important that you do everything for everybody all the time. And, your needs come last. It doesn't really matter what you're feeling or what you think about the situation. You just have to suck it up and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Well, that ship has sailed, and women more often than not are coming to the conclusion that, no, I need to put me first because it's better if I get my needs met, then I'm much better at meeting everybody else's needs. Absolutely. And it's going to happen and everybody's going to be happy with it, rather than me doing it begrudgingly because, I really wanted to do something else for
Right.
myself, even if it's sitting up in my room and watching television alone for an hour a night.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. And we have to shift that paradigm because we come from a society where the expectations on a woman are so unrealistic.
Mhm.
And and then we get shunned because we want to do something. I remember, let me tell you, I remember there was a point where, my husband worked from home. This is way before COVID, so this was years ago. My husband worked from home, so he would take the kids to school and pick them up. And for a long time, I felt inadequate as a wife and a mom because the other moms were like, oh my gosh, where's his wife? Why is he picking up the kids? And then I had to wake up one day and like, they're his kids too. Why can't he drop them off and pick them up? And so sometimes even other women will be looking because we're so brainwashed into thinking that the wife has to keep the house clean. The wife has to take everything with the kids and drop them off and pick them up and do homework and schedule doctor's appointments. Like there's just this brainwashing that has come over us as a society. And then when we get a glimpse wait a minute, it could be something different, then the guilt comes in. Then it's like, oh my gosh, but am I not going to be a good wife and a good mom if I don't do all these things? And so that's why I really work with wives on helping them with their mindset, getting out of that mindset that you have to do it all and be this super mom. Because guess what? Our emotional health, our physical health, and our mental health is all being compromised. And so we have to recognize that, you know what? It's so if my spouse don't do the dishes, then you know what? Maybe they'll may have to sit in the sink overnight because I'm tired and I'm exhausted and I need this extra 30 minutes of sleep. And so we have to be able to say that. I had a client one time and she was like, oh my gosh, Teleshia, I talked with my husband. We had this deal. I was gonna go down and do the dishes. He was gonna put the kids to bed, give them a bath and put them in the bed. And I came upstairs and he hadn't done it yet. And I said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, I gave him a bath. And you know what I told her? I said, you know what? I hate to say this, but you're part of the problem because now you're teaching your spouse that even though he had agreed to do something, when he doesn't do it, here you come to the rescue to pick up the things that he didn't do. And I said, so my thing is, what is the worst that could happen? Your kid go to bed without taking a bath. Is that really that bad? Right? If this is not a life or death type of situation, if your kids are not starving, like we have to be able to let some things go. And that's where having boundaries come in to say, you know what, babe, you and I had an understanding. I would do this, you would do that. I cannot do it all and I need your help. And then when he doesn't come through, it's not necessarily jumping in and do it. Now, again, depends upon the circumstance, right? That's why you have to wait. What is the worst that could happen if my kid goes to school and their hair is not done all nice and neat, or if their uniform is wrinkled? What's the worst that could happen? And so sometimes we have to not enable our spouses by doing the things that they say that they would do. We have to hold them accountable. No different than when we hold people accountable on our jobs when they're not a team player and they don't do their part of the work, right? And so it takes a lot of shifting. And so I always tell wives, you're in this space to help you get the courage to shake things up. Because for some of us, we have allowed our spouses to get away with way too much. And while that may have been okay in the first 5 years of the marriage, maybe you're in a season in your life where it's not okay because now you're physically tired and you're stressed out and you're completely overwhelmed. And so now we have to shift the conversations with our spouses and say, you know what, that was okay 5 years ago. I was younger. The kids were in a different spot. I was in a different spot. But I think we need to make some shifts and some changes because I can't keep going like this because I'm running ragged, I'm tired, I'm depleted, and I'm no good for you. And so that's why, we have to help wives get the courage to have those kind of conversations. And that's the thing that I kind of help them with being a part of the sorority.
And it's not just a one-time conversation. It's
No,
ongoing because there's different seasons in our lives, and the longer you're married, the more of those seasons you're going to go through, and you negotiate all the way along. I've reached the season in our life where my husband's retired and I'm not. And he was a truck driver, so he was gone all the time. And I was used to a certain amount of personal space in my life that I don't
Mm-hmm.
have anymore. But I also did like everything for him when he came home. I did all the dishes, his laundry, I made all the meals, I did all the shopping, I did all the everything. And when he came home, it's like, I can't do this all the time. I have a life of my own. I have things that I do. I can't live my life in your life too. So he's
Right.
learned to cook and he does all the grocery shopping and he runs the errands. I can't tell you the last time I filled the car up with gas because he just takes care of it. He takes the trash out all the time. I never take the trash out anymore. It's just like it's being able to have conversations and say, hey, you know, what can you do? How can you fit into the flow of where we are right now versus you know, you're talking about people that have little tiny kids. Their dynamics as a couple and a family are much different than people who have teenager kids who have like obligations and tons of things they need to do but no driver's license, so
Right.
you get into the taxi period of your life.
That is so, so true. And I love your story because that highlights how there was a period in your marriage where you did everything and you had to have conversations with your spouse, repeated conversations, because it's never just one conversation, like you said, right?
Number one.
But then guess what? Now he's chipping in ways now that he didn't 5 years ago. And that's the hope that I want to give wives. Your exact example is what wives need to hear because a lot of times they don't think three conversations, they're like, oh, he'll never change. Oh, he'll never want to do that. And they give up after the third conversation, right? And just like you said, it's a repeated conversation. But if we don't give up hope, right, and be willing to work through the situation, you'll get to that point where it'll be so much better for you. But a lot of times wives give up hope and think, oh, all hope is lost. It just is what it is. And I'm here to tell wives, no, it isn't. No,
I
it
have a
is.
secret too,
Yes.
and this is remembering to be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell my husband on occasion, hey, babe, it is so great that when I get in the car, I never have to worry about filling it up. Or I am so grateful that you take the trash out. I don't even have to mention it. I just know that in the morning, I'm going to go downstairs and empty my coffee grounds into the trash and it's going to be empty. And it makes me feel good when I know that I can depend on you for that. And it makes them feel good because it feels like you're giving them feedback that what you're doing matters to me and I have noticed. I'm paying attention to you and
Yeah.
they'll pay back attention back.
Absolutely. There's this thing of the law of reciprocity, right? When you're kind to people, they're more likely to reciprocate that level of kindness. And so when you show gratitude for what they do, one, it makes them feel good that they've made you happy, and it encourages them to want to do more because they want to hear you applaud them more. So they're more apt to doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I like to remind wives is that because I get wives who say, "But Teleshia, he just did one thing. I did 50 things today." And I said, "I know you did. I know you did 50. And he did one of those things. But let's applaud him for the one thing because tomorrow it may be three things. And then let's applaud him for the three things because the next day it may be five things, right?" And so that's what I tell wives. You might not get him to do 25 things and you do 25 things, but start with the one and let's work our way up 3, 5, 7, and then you'll get to a space. Now, it may not never be 50-50, but the goal is, do you see him putting forth an effort? That matters a lot. And so when you can show that gratitude, as you just described, what you did for your spouse, it makes them want to do more. And so that's one of the pillars that I talk about as wives. We have got to know how to use our influence because we can inspire them to want to be better husbands, better men. And you know the old saying, behind every great man, there's a great woman. I truly believe that, right? But we have the power and the influence. We just have to know how to be strategic in using it, not manipulative, but being very strategic and understand how to press the buttons to get our spouses to want to do better and want to change. It's possible.
It is possible, and it's kind of fun. It's not being mean, and it's not
Right.
nagging, and it's
Right.
it's really using the creative side of your mind. And I think having the sorority is an amazing opportunity for women to collaborate with each other, if nothing else. So it's like, I'm having this struggle.
Mhm.
What are you guys doing when you encounter this? And it, when you're with a group of people that are all walking on your same path, you've all experienced similar things, because there's there's just like there's a certain amount of things that happen to everybody in a married situation. Just like, you talk about taking your kids to sports events, or uh, music practice, or school, or whatever, doing homework even. There's these expectations of where they used to be, but they're changing, and the reason that they're changing is because women are talking about it. They're like, no, we cannot do it all.
No, we cannot.
And, you know, even if your husband only runs the vacuum once a month, at least you ran the vacuum once a month. That was what time less than you had to run it.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what it's really about, helping wives understand that there is the possibility of things changing, and you can't give up hope no matter how bleak your situation may feel in the moment. And we just have to make some shifts as to what's really important. Is that really important? And so it's so funny. I used to be the ultimate, like, I used to clean up. I used to spend 8 hours on Saturday cleaning the house. And at that time, my husband and I, we just had my stepdaughter. So she would go to her mom's house for the weekend. So she would be gone. My husband would go play basketball. So on Saturdays, I would be in the house all by myself, clean the house, spick and span, 8 hours flat, right? And I was doing it and I was fine with it at first. And then it got to a point, I was like, why am I the only one cleaning? I'm not the only one getting dirty. What? And everybody comes in and the house smelling good. Everything's good. And they don't have to do anything. And I say, oh no, let's have a family meeting. Mm-mm. Like what started off as something that I enjoyed, right? I did enjoy it for a moment. And then it got to a point where I was tired. And I was like, well, why am I the only one? And so I had to have conversations. I had to call a family meeting and say, you know what, we need to shift some things. Right. And so we have to recognize that we definitely go through seasons in life. And so what worked in one season may not work in another season. And so we have to be able to pivot, and include, our loved ones in that conversation to help them understand the why. Because of course they all looked at me with a side eye and was like, well, you were doing it, why all of a sudden now we have to do you? And I was like, oh, I did it. How about you be grateful and thankful that those were days that you didn't have to clean? But it's come to a point where this is a team effort, and everything shouldn't fall on one team member. And I gave them the analogy, like even when you play basketball, back in the day it was Jordan. And I was like, Jordan can score 50 points, and guess what? The team can still lose, because it's not all on the back of one person. It is truly a team effort. And so while we all have different contributions, and yeah, I may score more points than this, but we all have a level of contribution. And so it's being able to recognize that whilst we've got to release ourselves from this definition that if our spouses do certain things, it means it's on us, and we're not a good mom, and we're not a good wife, and things of that nature. And we have to release ourselves and give us that freedom to recognize that we're not superwoman, and it's okay. And we weren't built to be a superwoman. Yeah, we have better nurturing and emotional qualities maybe than men, right? So yeah, you can say that, when the baby cuts her knee on the sidewalk, you may be a lot more loving than maybe your spouse may be. Sure, right? We have different perspectives and different things that we bring to the table, but it's still a team effort. And so being able to recognize that we might not get to 50-50, but everything cannot fall on me. And I always want to encourage wives we need to get out of that mindset and start doing and prioritizing our self-care and filling our cup and learning how to have those conversations with our loved ones to get them on board.
Yeah, because if you don't, that's a recipe for divorce. I can't tell you how many women I've seen who suddenly go back into the workforce and they're making a lot of money, but they're still shouldering all of the responsibilities of running the household and cleaning the household and cooking and shopping and all of the things that go along with a household. And then the question always comes up, what do I have a spouse for?
Right.
Because they're not that valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Totally. And so that's why, in this modern day where, you have some women who are making more than their spouses, it is understanding, okay, well, what is everybody bringing to the table? Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if the wife is making more money, maybe she's been able to bring more to the table. So maybe they can afford a nanny or a housekeeper. But then what is the spouse doing? Are you dropping off the kids? What is your level of contribution? When I work with my clients, I walk them through an exercise because sometimes I have to admit, we make things look good and sometimes we make things look easy. And so, for example, if you after work, you run by the grocery store, you come home, you help little Johnny with the homework, and then you cooking, and then your spouse comes in. Your spouse just comes to a plate, a house that's smelling good with aroma, and they're sitting down with their plate mate. They don't have a clue of all the 10,000 things you've done since you've been home. And sometimes we make it look easy and we don't ask for help. And so they're like, oh, shoot, she's good. And it's like, no, 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 no. And so sometimes I walk my wives through a thing to help them truly identify all the things that you have been doing. Because sometimes for men, they need to see the visual. And then they're like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize, because it's not just cooking, but you spent chopping, you've been going up and down the aisle, put this in the oven, you're stirring the pot, now you went over there to help little Johnny with their homework. Like it's all those things. And so sometimes for men, we have to help them understand all that we're doing and say, babe, I cannot continue doing all of this every day. And then especially, I like to say this to my wives, especially when you're too tired for sex. Now you have even more reason to tell your spouse, babe, I'm too exhausted to have sex with you because I have done the 50,000 things since I've been home. I got up since 5 o'clock in the morning. Here it is at 9 o'clock at night. I have worked all day doing something for the house or for the job. And now you want to tap me on my shoulder. Baby, I would love to make love to you, but I just don't have the time or the energy. So now you're helping your spouse see that you're not just rejecting them for the sake of rejecting them. You're tired. And maybe, just maybe, if they help you out with something, take something off your plate, whether they do it or whether they pay somebody to do it, right? Because I always say help can come in many different forms. But if they find money in the budget to get a nanny, to pick up the kids, to clean the house, to do the grocery shopping, that's something that's off your plate, right? And so helping them understand what it does for you and what impact it has on them, then you get closer to helping them see that, okay, I understand, babe. I need to help you out around the house a little bit more, right? And so we just have
And
to be prepared that may be multiple conversations. But I take them through this exercise to get them to the point of having that courage to be able to start that conversation in a way in which your spouse doesn't get dismissive or defensive, right? Because there's a way we can say it that will totally turn it off, and this conversation will go sideways, and then you'll never get back to the issue. But there's a way to communicate with our spouses in a way that they will hear you. Now, they may not like what we're saying. That's not the goal always, but the goal is to help them understand what we're feeling. That's the goal.
and to let them have space to make mistakes.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
when you're talking about we make it look easy, The reason we make it look easy is because we've done it a bazillion times and we know all the shortcuts.
Yeah.
And when we pass something off, and I can share with you when my husband first learned to go to the grocery store by himself, I would send him with pictures. This is the kind of stuff I want. Like, I like a certain kind of canned tomatoes. So I would take a picture of the canned tomatoes and he could refer to it on his phone. But they're going to make mistakes. Like sometimes he would buy the wrong thing. Well, it's okay.
Yeah.
Give them space to make a mistake, or they don't do things the way you do them. Well, you got to the point of doing them that way because you made all those mistakes. You just did it faster, and now
Yeah.
you're faster and better. It doesn't mean that they can't get faster and better too, because they can. You just got to let them practice a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I used to get mad at the way my husband loaded the dishwasher. It used to drive me bananas. No rhyme or reason, just throwing it in there. And finally I said, you know what, Teleshia, that is one less thing on your plate. So if it's done like that, I'm not even gonna worry about it. And so I had to condition myself to like not worry about certain those things, because for me, I'm a type A personality, so I like everything in its space. There's a right way to do something, there's a wrong way to do. I'm very much that person. And so when my husband didn't do stuff the way that I thought it should be done, the right way, I would get angry and be like, oh, never mind. And so I tell the wives in my sorority, like, don't follow the mistakes that I made. Like, if your husband is willing to do something, let them do it. It's not going to be like you want it. It's okay. And so we have to recognize, what is the worst that could happen, right? The worst that could happen? Oh, well, if the worst that could happen is maybe, the bowls stay up and the water gets all in the bowls and they don't get washed. Okay, well, he'll just run it again, right? Like, what is the worst that can happen? And so sometimes we have to let them learn. And you're right. Like, if we've done it a million times, they've done it 10, they haven't perfected it, but it's okay, right? The goal is it's one less thing on your to-do list. And so work towards that, and then you'll, when we start to let those things go, then we have a lot more freedom. And then here's the deal: then it becomes a place where the things that used to bother you don't even bother you no more, because you're just excited. You don't even have to think about that thing anymore.
My husband early on, he's like, well, can you make me a list of the things that you want done? And so I have really bad penmanship. I admit this freely.
Uh-huh.
So I made him a list. And one of the things on the list was wipe down the bathroom sink. And he thought it said wipe the damn sink.
Oh my goodness, hilarious. So he was like, wait a minute.
You can have fun with it too.
Exactly. So it's definitely a give and take. There are no perfect days, but the goal is not to forget that this is your life partner. And in there, it's not going to always, be great. I always say it's like football, right? There are going to be years you're going to win a Super Bowl, and there are going to be years where the season sucks, right? And so we have to recognize life is like that sometimes. Sometimes you're going to make it to the playoffs, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're going to make it to the finals and don't win the Super Bowl, and sometimes you make it to the end and you win the Super Bowl, right? And so it's just being able to navigate through those seasons. And the key is, just like, with sports, it's important what you do in the season, but it's also important what you do in the off season as well. And so it's always working towards the goal. Like, there is just no, well, we're just going to work on the goal for now. It's a constant daily work. And hopefully, because we've made the vows, we're recognizing that there's work every day. And, one of the misnomers is that, it will come easy because our love just going to carry us through. But we all know that is not it. It literally takes work every single day, but it's worth it if you put in the work. It is so worth it.
It really is. And I love that you have this sorority. How do people get involved with you with the sorority? And we didn't even talk about the Happy Wife IQ test. We have to talk about that too.
Okay, so really quickly, I would love for your audience to go to happywifeiq.com. happywifeiq.com. It is a 20-question assessment to help you assess your level of happiness. And because at the end of the day, it's about striving to be happy, right? We all want to strive to be rich. We want to strive to have productive kids. But let's strive to be happy in life. And so the great thing about this assessment is when you're done with the 20 questions, you'll get a sense of where you are, where's your level, where's your IQ when it comes to your level of happiness. But it'll also help you discover areas that if you make certain tweaks in certain areas of your life, you're going to be able to increase your level of happiness. And so I would love for your audience to take the Happy Wife IQ assessment. So just go to happywifeiq.com. And of course, our website is happywifesorority.com. If you just want to check us out and check out and honestly just join us. I always say #no wife left behind. We all need each other so we don't, feel alone. And we have a place where we can learn, we can share, we can cry, we can vent, we can grow, we can laugh, and we can celebrate together. And that's what it's about. We are truly the best sisterhood and support system for wives. And I created it because I was a good wife, but I wasn't a happy wife. And I can say now, 22 years in, that I'm a good wife and a happy wife. And my husband says I am the best thing that ever happened to him. And he told me that without me even asking. So it works. It works. It works.
That is so special. It really does make a difference. So is your Happy Wife Sorority, is it a coaching program or is it a group?
So it is, so that's So it's all things, honestly. So when you join the Happy Wife Sorority, we do free master classes. I actually have master classes. I do free challenges in the group. And then I have paid stuff as well. So you can either I do live events, live/virtual events. And then I also do a coaching program, a 6-month coaching program called the DNA of a Happy Wife. And so that's really around helping wives get the clarity, the courage, and the confidence to be able to shake things up so they can live the life and relationships of their dreams and really have a love that is passionate as their wedding day. And so that's what the Academy is all about. And then, of course, I do private one-on-one coaching for those who don't want to be in a group and really just want some one-on-one FaceTime and coaching from me. So when you join the sorority, you get access to the free stuff as well as access to some paid activities as well, depending upon where you are in your journey.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up for us. So what's the one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
You should be the architect of your own happiness. Your happiness is not your spouse's job. Your happiness is not your kid's job. Your happiness is actually your job. And so you own and control your happiness, and it's your job not to allow other people to steal your joy. And so that's what I want all wives to do. When I got married, I thought it was my spouse's job to make me happy. And I had to quickly learn it's not their job to make me happy. They need to make themselves happy, and I need to make myself happy, and not to rely and depend on them for my level of happiness. Because if he doesn't show up, I don't want to be depressed because he didn't show up, right? I have to make sure that I am in control and the architect of my own happiness. And I want wives to understand that you have way more control than you give yourself credit. And I want you to harness that power that you have to control your own happiness.
I love that. Thank you so much, Teleshia, for joining me today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed myself. It was great talking with you, and I really hope your audience has found something that resonates with them that's going to live deep within their souls.
Me too.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at The U World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.